Okay, let's unpack this. We're about to take a deep dive into a case that, well, it feels like it was ripped from a dark Hollywood script, but sadly, it was all too real. It's a story that brought together two vastly different worlds. You know, the iconic, often turbulent realm of classic music production and the bright, hopeful lights of Hollywood acting.
And it ended in tragedy and a really long, drawn-out legal battle.
Exactly.
That's right. At the heart of this deep dive is the death of actress Lana Clarkson and the subsequent trials and conviction of one of music's most legendary and, frankly, reclusive figures, Phil Spector.
And our guide for this journey, we're working from a really detailed account of the events the night it happened, the trials, the appeals, pretty much everything that followed.
So our mission seems pretty clear. We need to cut through the complexity, pull out the absolute most important facts, try to understand the twists and turns of the legal process as laid out in this source.
Right.
And really pinpoint the details that make this case stick with you for, better or worse. Let's jump in and explore the key moments.
Okay, so the account kicks off in the night and into the early morning of February 3, 2003. We meet the two central figures, Lana Clarkson, an actress, maybe known for roles like the film Barbarian Queen, and Phil Spector, the, reclusive genius behind huge hits like Be My Baby and The Whole Wall of Sound technique.
They crossed paths in the very early hours of the morning. It was at the House of Blues in Los Angeles. Clarkson was actually working there.
Okay.
The source tells us they left together, driven in Spector's limousine.
The limo took them to Spector's incredible mansion, famously known as the Pyrenees Castle, out in Alhambra, California.
Right.
And here's a key detail right from the start. The driver, Adriano de Souza, didn't go inside. He waited outside, in the car.
Yeah, that's important. It was later that morning, around 5 a.m., that the situation turned, horrific. Clarkson was found dead inside the mansion.
And the scene, this count describes it with some incredibly specific and pretty grim details. Her body was found slumped in a chair in the foyer. She had a single gunshot wound, and specifically, it was to her mouth. The source even notes that broken teeth were scattered on the carpet nearby.
Yeah, and the immediate aftermath gave us the first major piece of witness information. Spector's driver, Adriano de Souza.
The one waiting outside.
Exactly. He reported that Spector came out of the house holding a gun and actually said, "I think I killed someone."
Wow. Okay. Now, on the physical evidence side, something that immediately stands out from this account, Spector's fingerprints. They were not found on the supposed murder weapon.
Right, that was a .38 caliber Colt Cobra revolver found near Clarkson's body. No prints from Spector. This absence of prints on the weapon, combined with the scene, it presented a challenge for the prosecution, didn't it?
For sure.
And it leads us directly into a crucial part of their strategy, introducing evidence of Spector's alleged past behavior with other women.
The prior acts evidence. This was the prosecution basically arguing that Spector had a history that shed light on what happened that night.
Yeah, the source details their claim that Spector had previously pulled a gun on 4 other women on separate occasions.
Was that so?
And they argued there was a clear pattern to these instances. According to their presentation, Spector had been drinking, he'd shown romantic interest in the woman, then became angry or agitated when he felt rejected or spurned, and then allegedly used a gun to prevent her from leaving.
So the prosecution stated reason for bringing in testimony from these other women wasn't just to say Spector was a bad guy, right? It was to demonstrate what they legally termed a common plan or scheme.
Well, that was their initial argument, but the judge later clarified a slightly different, though related, reason for allowing it.
Okay.
Exactly. The source points out that generally evidence of past bad acts isn't allowed in court. It can be too prejudicial to the jury.
Right. Makes sense.
But in this case, the judge made a pivotal ruling. He permitted this testimony because, in the judge's own words, it can be used to show lack of accident or mistake.
Okay. And that judge's reasoning is crucial, isn't it? Think about it. If the defense were to argue the gun went off accidentally,
which was a likely defense.
Right. Then this prior act's testimony could be used by the prosecution to argue, look, this wasn't an accident. It fits a disturbing pattern of intentional behavior when things didn't go his way.
Exactly. It directly aimed to counter a potential defense of accidental death or suicide.
You really set the stage for the legal battle to come.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the trials.
Yeah.
Plural. The first trial kicked off on March 19, 2007. Spector had been free on $1 million bail while waiting.
Yeah. Judge Larry Paul Fidler presided over this first trial in Los Angeles Superior Court. And this account mentions something kind of interesting for legal watchers. The proceedings were actually televised in LA.
Oh, really? Okay. There was also a significant point of controversy during this trial that the source highlights. The defense's own forensic expert, a very well-known figure, Henry Lee.
Yeah, famous expert.
He was accused by the prosecution of hiding crucial evidence found at the scene. Or mishandling it, maybe.
Yeah. Right, that was a whole side drama. Ultimately, though, that first trial didn't result in a verdict. On September 26, 2007, a mistrial was declared. Jury was hung.
And the source even provides the breakdown of that hung jury. 10 jurors were leaning towards conviction, but 2 were against. So, no unanimous decision.
Couldn't get there.
It's also worth noting, Spector went through several high-profile defense attorneys leading up to and during this first trial. Robert Shapiro early on.
With the arraignment and bail, yeah.
Then Bruce Cutler, who actually withdrew, citing, strategy differences.
Difference of opinion, yeah. That happened mid-trial, almost.
And Linda Kenny Baden ended up being the lead lawyer for the closing arguments.
Quite the legal shuffle. So, with no decision, a retrial was necessary. The second trial began over a year later, October 20, 2008, again with Judge Fidler presiding.
But a key difference this time around, the source notes the proceedings were not televised, unlike the first one.
Kept the cameras out. After months of testimony and evidence, the case went back to the jury on March 26, 2009. They deliberated and returned with their verdict a few weeks later, April 13, 2009. This time, the jury reached a decision. They found Phil Spector guilty.
Guilty of what charge?
Second-degree murder. And importantly, the source notes an additional finding by the jury. They also found him guilty of using a firearm in the commission of the crime.
The gun enhancement.
Right, which automatically added 4 years to his sentence.
So what was the sentence?
Spector was taken into custody immediately after the verdict. His sentencing followed on May 29, 2009. He received a sentence of 19 years to life in the California state prison system.
19 to life. And that, still wasn't the end of the legal story.
Right.
This account then details the extensive and, frankly, complex appeals process that followed.
Right. It always does, doesn't it? The initial appeal within the state system went to the California 2nd District Court of Appeal. They reviewed the case.
Why?
And they affirmed the conviction in May 2011. Basically, they upheld the trial court's decision. A request for a rehearing was denied shortly after that.
So his team then took it higher, to the state Supreme Court.
They did. They sought review from the California Supreme Court, but in August 2011, the court declined to review the Court of Appeals decision.
Okay, so that pretty much exhausted his appeals within the California state system.
Correct. So the focus then shifted to the federal courts. Spector's attorneys petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court in December 2011, asking the highest court in the land to hear his case.
And what was their main argument to the Supreme Court? This account lays it out. It was about constitutional due process, right?
Yeah, specifically, they argued that Spector's rights were violated because prosecutors had used comments the trial judge Fidler had made about an expert's testimony.
How so?
Well, the defense claimed that using those comments essentially turned the judge into a witness for the prosecution. His attorney, Dennis Riordan, argued that allowing a videotape of the judge's pretrial statements the defense couldn't cross-examine the judge about.
Right, you can't cross-examine the judge.
Exactly. Riordan argued it violated Spector's Sixth Amendment right to confront the witnesses against him.
That's a complex legal argument. Essentially saying the judge's own words from before the trial were used like testimony against Spector, but without the chance for the defense to challenge him on it.
Pretty much. It's a fascinating angle, trying to challenge the conviction on those procedural grounds.
But what did the Supreme Court say?
They denied the petition in February 2012. They chose not to hear the case.
Okay. But the appeals didn't stop there either. This account keeps going.
Nope. Shows you how persistent these things can be. Spector's legal team kept pursuing further federal appeals. Attorney Dennis Riordan filed a petition with a U.S. magistrate in July 2013. He even urged prompt action, the source notes, given Spector's reported ill health at the time.
So what happened with that petition?
In June 2015, the federal magistrate judge, Paul L. Abrams, reviewed the case and recommended that Spector's petition, this would be a habeas corpus petition.
Right, challenging the legality of his detention.
Exactly. The magistrate recommended that the habeas petition should be denied and the appeal dismissed.
And did the district judge agree?
Yes, that recommendation was adopted by the district judge, S. James Otero, who ordered the dismissal the following month, July 2015. A habeas petition is, a common path for prisoners after state appeals are done. often claiming constitutional errors occurred.
So, another dead end, legally speaking.
Seems so. The final step mentioned in this document is Spector's lawyers filing another motion in August 2015, basically asking for permission to appeal that dismissal to the next level, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Just kept going.
Yeah. The story of Phil Spector's life and these legal battles, though, it comes to a close with his death. That occurred on January 16th, 2021.
And the cause of death listed here is complications from COVID-19.
Yes. He was serving his sentence at the California Healthcare Facility, which is part of the California State Prison System in Stockton.
And this account notes that had he lived, he would actually have been eligible for parole consideration in 2024.
Just a few years away, potentially.
Finally, this detailed source also touches upon how this case, impacted popular culture. It mentions a couple of films it inspired.
Right. First, there's The Agony and the Ecstasy of Phil Spector. That was a 2008 television documentary made by Vikram Jayanti. It's notable because it featured Spector's first major screen interview. It mixed images from the trial with performances of his music and, kind of interestingly, used subtitles to add critical commentary on his production techniques.
Did it take a side?
The source notes it didn't take an official stance on his guilt, but it definitely used the court proceedings to explain the case and, well, frame his persona.
Okay. And the other film?
The other is Phil Spector. That was an HBO film from 2013, written and directed by David Mamet. It starred Al Pacino as Spector and Helen Mirren as his defense attorney, Linda Kenny Baden. This was definitely a fictionalized take, focusing on the murder and that first trial.
And this account includes some significant criticisms leveled against that HBO film, doesn't it?
It does. Lana Clarkson's family and friends apparently felt it gave undue weight or merit to the defense's suggestion of suicide.
Okay, I can see that being an issue for them.
And Spector's then-wife, Rochelle Spector, also criticized his portrayal. She called Pacino's version a foul-mouthed megalomaniac and a minotaur. Strong words.
Yeah, really highlights how sensitive and contested the narrative around this case remained, even years later in film adaptations.
Absolutely.
So you've just navigated this really detailed journey with us. I mean, from a chance meeting at a music club, leading to a tragic discovery at a mansion,
Yeah.
through 2 high-profile trials, a lengthy series of state and federal appeals, and ultimately a life sentence ending in prison.
You've seen how everything from the specific, stark details at the crime scene, the location of the body, the wound, the teeth, and that chilling statement from the driver, to the complex legal strategies like introducing prior acts evidence, the judge's pivotal rulings on admissibility, and the persistent multi-layered appeals process, how all those factors define the outcome and the documented history of this case.
Diving into source material like this comprehensive account, it really provides a unique way to get a neutral, factual overview of all the key events, the dates, the legal arguments presented. It gives you the framework for understanding this complex story.
Yeah, it does. This deep dive has really underscored how, even in a case involving famous individuals and, dramatic circumstances, it's the nitty-gritty details, the evidence presentation, the specific applications of legal procedure, the exhaustive nature of the appeal system that truly shape the narrative and the final judgment.
Absolutely. So thinking about that extensive and detailed appeals process we just walked through, particularly the arguments raised about due process, about the right to confront witnesses, what does that level of legal challenge, pursued for so long, suggest to you about the built-in checks and balances within the justice system, even years after the initial conviction? Something to consider.